This is the smartphone I've used the most throughout 2023. Now, I've used almost every flagship phone over the past year, but the Google Pixel 7 Pro is where I've kept my main SIM almost the entire time, close to 10 months ago at the time this video is going live. So with Android 14 basically ready to go and the Pixel 8 on the horizon, it's time to see how this thing has fared in the context of earlier Pixels, but also compared to the other flagships that we have today. Because there is one fairly big weakness that has me reconsidering right now whether I really want to stay on Team Pixel into 2024. I'm Alex Dobie, this is XDA TV, let's get into it. First of all, I'm still pretty enamored with the way this phone looks. In an age when some folks like Samsung have gone minimalist almost to the point of boredom, you can still spot a Pixel from a mile away, especially in this bright white plus silver color combo. The main design flair, of course, being that camera bar, which hangs a lantern on some of the hardware that makes the Pixel special. Being made of polished aluminium, this reflective trim here definitely is a bit of a magnet for scratches, even though I have been pretty careful with this phone over the past few months. If you're old enough to remember how early iPods looked after a few months going in and out of a mid-2000s jeans pocket, this is pretty much the same effect here. Look even moderately close and you can see plenty of hairline scratches. By comparison, the screen hasn't fared too badly, a handful of tiny scratches that are unavoidable in just about any phone that you've used for about a year, and thankfully the oleophobic coating has lasted just fine. I've definitely known some phones to have this coating wear off after a similar length of time, which can make any screen look horrible and greasy. As for the design and hand feel, from the front this is a pretty generic looking phone, right? There's no shortage of big curved screens out there. Those curved edges reportedly will be retired in the Pixel 8 Pro when that launches in favor of flatter, more uniform borders. Hopefully that means finding decent screen protectors for the new model will be a little easier. It's always tough to find high quality glass ones for phones like the 7 Pro, which is why I haven't bothered to do so. I definitely have appreciated how the Pixel 7 Pro is just ever so slightly smaller and lighter than a lot of big phones out there, like the S23 Ultra or iPhone 14 Pro Max. That 6.7-inch diagonal is just a little easier on the hand for things like typing, while also being less of an encumbrance in the pocket. For me, as someone who likes big phones, this definitely feels like the sweet spot between visibility and portability. Next, let's get to perhaps the one area of the hardware that hasn't aged so elegantly. The Pixel 7 Pro runs Google's second generation Tensor processor, built in partnership with Samsung. At the time when it launched in 2022, it was going up against the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, a pretty decent chip with reasonable power efficiency, but since then we've had a whole release cycle of 8 Gen 2 flagships, and that newer Qualcomm chip has really highlighted some of the weaknesses of the Google silicon. Not only do phones like the S23 Ultra and OnePlus 11 far outpace the Pixel in benchmarks and demanding games, but they do so while producing less heat and with less of a battery hit. Looking at the raw numbers, that's not too surprising. The Tensor is built on Samsung's 5nm process versus TSMC's superior 4nm, and it runs on older core designs. So in terms of computation and efficiency, it has more in common with Samsung's Exynos 2200 from a year ago than Qualcomm's current stuff. That also makes it a fairly modest upgrade from the first gen Tensor, which also had a reputation for running a little hot. That's not to say you'll notice heat issues every day with this phone, but having used it side by side with current flagships, it just pumps out more heat doing the same thing. Most noticeably, streaming over 5G would cause the back of the Pixel around the camera bar to get noticeably warmer than most Snapdragon devices, with a corresponding hit to battery life as well. Again, I don't want to undersell the Pixel's longevity because generally speaking it's just fine. A full day with 5 or so hours of screen on time is doable, but the generation plus difference in the chip here can be seen, and after a year it's definitely the Pixel's biggest weakness. And with it being summer right now compared to the fall when the phone first launched, yeah, it can get a little bit toasty. That said, the Pixel's propensity to sometimes double as a portable hand warmer hasn't impeded how fast it seems at all. Even after almost a year, my 7 Pro is fast and reliable. And while I'd usually be inclined to push for more storage in a phone like this, the 128GB model that I've been using has fared pretty well, just over 50% storage used at the moment, though that's with most of my photos being offloaded to Google Photos Cloud. If you prefer to keep more stuff locally, your mileage here definitely will vary. Going forward, CPU-wise, things are definitely looking more promising in the Tensor G3 and the Pixel 8 series. That chip should use a more efficient manufacturing process and newer core designs that'll likely put it in the same ballpark as the current Snapdragons. But for the moment, just be aware that this isn't the very best SoC for gaming and runs a little bit hotter than the cutting edge. It's a very similar story really with the charging situation. The less efficient chip versus most 2023 flagships means you're more likely to be reaching for a midday refill with the Pixel 7 Pro, and if you do, the limited charging rates mean you'll be stuck to a wall for longer. Throw in the aforementioned heat issues and you'll sometimes find the Pixel getting quite hot if you're charging on the go. This hasn't been a huge deal breaker for me in day-to-day use, but it is something you really do feel on travel days. The cutting edge of phone charging tech is pushing 100 watts or more right now. That can give you a full refill in half an hour and with fewer heat issues to boot. Okay, that's enough complaining for now, because I want to dig into the Pixel 7 Pro's camera, and from start to finish this has been an absolute joy to shoot photos with. As always with the Pixel's cameras, it's not so much about the hardware as what Google's AI trickery and magical software processing can do with that optical data. The Pixel's computational photography routinely produces excellent photos regardless of lighting conditions, often pulling out colors or fine details that will be scrubbed away by competing flagship cameras. Google doesn't have the very largest image sensors, but it doesn't need them to produce some of the best stills you can get from a smartphone, even in lower light. The Pixel's periscope telephoto at 5 times hits the sweet spot for longer zoomed images with a dramatically different look. And the fact that it incorporates data from that 50 megapixel main sensor in telephoto captures allows it to produce surprisingly great telephoto pics in lower light too. In photography, there are really only a couple of cameras that can challenge the Pixel 7 Pro. The first is Samsung's Galaxy S23 Ultra, mainly on account of its super telephoto 10x camera that can really produce usable shots at even 20 to 30x. That's a longer zoom range than you'll get out of the Pixel. And Samsung can also do a little better in extreme low light on account of its larger sensor, but this is pretty situational. The second phone I've used that sometimes outclasses the Pixel is Oppo's Find X6 Pro. Once again, this is a phone that's currently only available in China, and you'll need to deal with software that very much is not designed for the West if you import one. But this phone showcases the power of just brute forcing your phone camera setup with 3 enormous sensors, and could show what to expect from Google's rivals in the years ahead. As a result of superior camera hardware, Oppo can lean on this optical advantage to outperform the Pixel in some scenarios. Just look at the level of bokeh that you can get in shots like this. Even with that optical advantage though, I think Google's telephoto often pulls ahead at higher zoom levels just because of its superior processing. Oppo still has a tendency to mush up tighter telephoto shots at 10 times or above. But where Oppo really pulls ahead compared to Google is in video. And this is true of Samsung and Apple as well to an extent, though the difference is particularly stark when you look at footage from the Find and the Pixel side by side, especially using any of the telephoto cameras and especially in low light. Despite some efforts made to upgrade the Pixel's video capabilities, Google still lags behind with noisier output and some telltale judders in darker conditions at 4K. Still, I'm someone who takes more stills than I do video on a daily basis, so I've always felt more than confident in the Pixel's capabilities, whether it's a twilight skyline or a golden hour portrait. Everything this camera does in terms of still photography absolutely holds up, even a year on from release, and even alongside more expensive rivals. And the features that come with that camera are the icing on the cake. Some of these, like Magic Eraser, are no longer Pixel exclusives. You can subscribe to Google One and get this bundled in, and you can even use it on an iPhone. But the near magical photo unblurring feature in Google Photos continues to be limited to the latest Google flagship. And aside from being able to use it on older photos or pics from other phones, it's a great safety net for the handful of occasions where the telephoto falls victim to motion blur or someone moves at an inopportune time. So yeah, TLDR, the video performance could definitely be better, but the still photo quality I think speaks for itself. The other tentpole Pixel feature is the Pixel UI itself. But actually, even calling this the Pixel UI kinda undersells it. There are so many useful tricks for everything from identifying songs in the background to transcribing audio automatically. And more are being added all the time through quarterly feature drops. Google is still the only manufacturer besides Apple that 99% of the time rolls out software updates on day one as opposed to staggering releases for older models. That means those quarterly feature drops arrive right on schedule, and you also get new Android software updates on day one for each of the 3 years of software support lifespan, of which right now the Pixel 7 Pro has just over 2 years remaining. I'm currently running Android 14 beta on my Pixel 7 Pro right now. At the time of talking, this is beta 4, which is pretty much stable and ready to go, with probably less than a month remaining until the actual stable version actually drops. Android 14 isn't much of a visual overhaul, but I've still appreciated the changes to the lock screen with new clock options and the efforts Google's made to make the back gesture more predictable. I know the Pixel's Material You design language isn't for everyone, but I've come to really appreciate it over the past 2 years since it launched with Android 12. It's approachable and personalizable without being overbearing. Could Google be doing more in terms of software? The only thing that stands out to me is the 3 years of OS updates, which falls behind Samsung and even OnePlus right now. When it comes to updates, Google is very much in the driver's seat right now with the Tensor project, so there really is no excuse to be falling behind what its competitors are offering. Nevertheless, between the software experience and the excellent cameras, I've enjoyed this phone a lot over the past year, even if the current crop of Snapdragon phones have surpassed it in terms of sheer performance. As someone who's used every Pixel for as long as the line has been going, I'm really hoping for the next one in the series to do away with its reputation for running hot and with poor battery life. For the moment though, this is a compromise I can grudgingly accept. If you're looking at picking up a Pixel 7 Pro today though, I'd definitely wait on a sale or shop around for some deals. On the official Google store in both the US and UK, it's back to its full retail price after being discounted by $250 over Prime Day. And for $899 or £849, you're most of the way to an S23 Plus, a more advanced model that'll last you longer. And you're also in the same ballpark as a OnePlus 11, a cheaper phone with stupidly quick charging, though a somewhat weaker camera. At a discounted price though, say between $600 and $700 of your favorite currency, my most used smartphone of 2023 is still a great buy, especially considering the likelihood of the Pixel 8 Pro debuting with a slightly higher price tag. That's it for now. If you've used a Pixel 7 Pro, let me know what you think and how you're getting on with it down in the comments. Be sure to subscribe for more long-term reviews like this one, we really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.